Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again for another indie comic review, and with this indie comic review I am going to be reviewing King Spawn, the first issue, to which I've learned that there's going to be 4 issues to this particular run. Whether I get to review them all, I'm not too sure yet, but I will say one thing, I certainly enjoyed this first issue. But first things first, let's jump into the cover rating. My goodness. Does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's with something within inside the story, or help to project something that happens within inside the story? The answer is yes, to which I gave this cover a 7.5 out of 10. And my goodness, I really like what has been done here. As you can see, you can make the appearance of Spawn himself. With the darkness encompassing him, but also some flashes of light. And not just through my window. Very basic, very simple cover, but I still like it. Now to move into the art. Now, in this particular story of King Spawn, there's actually quite a number of chapters in here. Even though they're not pointed out as chapters, they are some short stories. In between, there's like one big story followed by a few short stories. And I'll try to do my best to show some of the art connected to all of the stories from the beginning to end. But it's all one story. And as you can see there on the left hand side, everyone who's responsible for the art and stories in this book. And we move into the first page. I'll now jump to a couple of pages forward, and we begin to see the appearance of course, Spawn himself, with also She-Spawn, Jessica Priest. Very nice art in this, as they discuss the case which is at hand. I'll move to the next couple of pages. If it's one thing I want to point out, and that is how much I enjoy the art in this story. My goodness, the time, the effort that must have been put into each and every story in this really stands out. And this is something towards the end of the first story. And you see this here brings us into the beginning of what will be the next story in this. Some art in reference to this particular next story of a character by the name of Horns. And finally, at the end of the story, it's a very short story, but it has quite a bit of information as to what happens. He also encounters someone from like the high heavenlies in the story. Now, this is one of the next stories, and of course we've got another different Spawn here. And my goodness, look at that costume. He's got that look as if to say, don't bloody mess with me. Look. You'll regret it. And as you can see, there's some pictures to sort of like help point that out as well. Then we jump into the next story. Lovely art done here, especially showing some of the cosmos of space. Back to one of the characters within the story. And yes, this story actually does center on this particular character. On the young character. There is one more last story here, but that actually connects to the beginning of another series, which is the Spawn Gunslinger. And my goodness, now jumping into the Gunslinger. And last but not least, the actual last page. For the art in this, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. And my goodness, the variety also done within the art for each of the story was very nice, very consistent too, because it did make sure to sort of like highlight some areas in black and white, others a little bit monochrome, and then of course color when there needed to be color. And I really liked what happened there. Now, jumping directly into the story, the first one has to do with a bomb going off at pretty much a kindergarten, and there's a bit of a rumor thinking that maybe the person who actually set off the bomb in the kindergarten was actually the kindergarten teacher himself, but it's still sort of left with no particular evidence. It's just basically hearsay. Moving into the next couple of things, it's like they are waiting for King Spawn to arrive. Like the actual King Spawn to arrive in this universe, or in this part of the Spawn universe. And that sort of seems to cover over with the rest of the stories, but is done in very minuscule ways. And with the variant of stories that are in it, it was very interesting to actually see one also center around a young character. And that story actually sort of caught me out the most. I didn't expect to see it. I didn't expect to read it. But what I read of it, I enjoyed because of this fictional story. So, moving into things that I enjoy in my storytelling, were there any comic references? You bloody bet there were. It would have been nice to see actually a couple more, but I'm happy with what's already put in here, and that is Spawn issue 301. When things moved to the time limit, we had, I think it was 4 to 7 months ago, which came across in one of the stories. Another one, the last one having to do with the Gunslinger, we had the years of 1865 and 1864 being brought up as you start to learn about the character of the Gunslinger and how he's actually appeared in the Spawn universe. We had the locations of the USA. We even got the appearance of a Russian satellite by the name called the RX-2976. The cast of characters being made up of Spawn, She-Spawn, to which they were seen at the beginning of the story of what I showed you there. Then we had Spawn through his own investigations, looking out for Metatron, and we find out that Metatron is, well, pretty much friggin' carked it in the story. And that was very interesting. A character within the story ends up getting carked. lost for good. We, of course, had Haunt. Into the story of Hero, we had Alex, we had Kiyamoto, Komox, who was pretty much, I guess, instigating him on. And we had, last but not least, Gunslinger Spawn at the end. I really enjoyed this. Sort of wondering where the next issue is going to take us. And as for now, I forgot one thing. What about the story rating? What did I give the story rating? Surprisingly enough, with the consistency within the whole story, within each of the stories that are in this one particular book, or one particular comic, I gave it an 8 out of 10 because they all feel like they're connected to what is going to be happening with this King Spawn arriving. Well, until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.